Hello, dear viewers. I hope you're all doing well today. All right, so we're going to have a little bit of fun here. And I do mean that literally. Because I'm a pedantic old man, this is how it's going to work, right? There's a whole bunch of random clickbait articles written by sites like Looper, CBR, Io9, all sorts of stuff that are trying to propagate knowledge of these franchises in a tongue-in-cheek way. Haha, look how silly they are, or haha, these are things you totally would have missed. So let's go through them. A few of them I've got, let's see here. Oh god, 14. 14 of them. So let's go through them and see how accurate they are. Can everybody hear me? Just waiting for confirmation on the chat. I'll make sure my levels are accurate. People be quiet up in here, yo. Alright, so let's go ahead and go through this while I'm waiting on confirmation that you guys can, in fact, hear me. Alright, killer. Time to rip and tear. Alright, so this article by Looper, by an Ellie Collins, is purporting about things that you only notice as an adult. Now, you only notice as an adult, people. Remember, we got big brains up in here. Number one, everyone sort of forgets that Lion-O is a child. This is dealt with directly in the first couple episodes, but the thing about 1980s TV is that with these daily strip shows, most kids didn't watch every day, according to Who. And Thundercats took a while before it was considered a much watched by kids getting home from school. Ratings say otherwise, but, that's okay. Nevertheless, when the series began, Lion-O was a young boy, the same size, blah, 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 blah. Going into basically saying, well, people forgot that he was a kid. No, that was a major plot point for the majority of season 1. It wasn't until after the anointment trials that started cutting down. So, yeah, just no. Moving on. It's Jaga's fault Thundera blew up. I'll give you a point. You are technically correct. Let's see here. The series begins with the destruction of Thundera and the escape of a central Thundercats character under the leadership of their old wise leader, Jaga. Jaga doesn't live to see their new home on Third Earth, but he frequently returns as an Obi-Wan Kenobi-esque shimmering blue ghost. No real specific explanation for the death of Thundera is given in that first episode. It's called story building. It's okay. It's just sort of Krypton-esque, we have to evacuate our home planet because it's about to blow up scenario. It's only much later in the episode Thunder Cubs that we learn the reason for the planet's destruction. Years earlier, when Jaga was a yet much younger man, well, relatively, he's centuries old, he defeats a mutant leader named Ratilla. Ratilla had carried a double-bladed magical weapon, the Sword of Plundar, an evil equivalent to the Thundercats' own Sword of Omens. Well, I keep hearing people say that, but the show never once told you it's the evil equivalent to the Sword of Omens. The thing gets bodied regularly in fights. The Thunder Cutter cut it into 3 different pieces. Upon defeating Ratilla, Jaga is seen throwing the Sword of Plundar into a volcanic canyon, reassured as it sinks into the molten lava that no mutant will wield it again. Well, technically he's correct. No mutant did wield it again. However, he clearly underestimates the sword's evil magic, and the Sword of Plundar works its way to the core of Thundera, eventually splitting the planet in 2. Thus, the show reveals, although surprisingly little is made of, the wise advisor who was guiding Thundercats this entire time actually made the mistake of costing them everything. Couple things. When you're getting rid of a magical artifact that's evil, you would think throwing it into the core of your planet will keep it away from everything or destroy it. You can't magically foresee that it's going to blow up your planet. Secondly, what do you mean little's made of it? The only character in canon that knows of this other than Jaga, perhaps after the fact, is Mumra. The Thundercats were never told about this. What are you going on about? Let's see. Third Earth is our Earth in the far future. Kids notice this. Mumra literally talks about being an Egyptian from Third Earth's first age, which is First Earth, which was ancient Egypt. So I'm going to skip over this nonsense. Mumra is the only Earthling in the cast. So the Warrior Maidens aren't Earthlings. The Wolos, the Balkans, the Talbots, all these characters that have shown no type of interplanetary travel. They're not Earthlings. No, they're just stupid. is your argument that he's the only human? Because that's the argument. Then he's not either, because you also got Dr. Dome Tome and the Warrior Maidens, who are also Earthlings and humans. So, holy crap. Let's see here. Obviously, Merlin isn't the only ancient immortal who survived from first Earth third. You don't say. So you already just... Oh my god. Mum-Ra falls in the same category with his glowing red eyes, deathly gray pallor, and twisted face. Mum-Ra is a terrifying as 80s cartoon villains go. I agree with that. That's all the more reason that it would never occur to most kids that Mum-Ra is the only human being in the... At least Mum-Ra used to be a human being. So what are you arguing for? Because you literally just talked about Merlin being here. And Merlin's a human. Holy crap. Well, the reason why I didn't list Mandora, Grim, is because I don't know if Mandora is sort of like Safari Joe in the sense that she's humanoid, but not an Earthling, right? Let's see here. Thundercats are naked in the first episode. Well, there's a point of contention on that. Number one, you can see, obviously, the lines around the legs, which may indicate bodysuits, but they're also not covered in fur. It's a holdover, technically, from the pre-production designs they had about the Thundercats that got carried over into Exodus during early production, right? They don't have fur, but you got to show some sort of innocence, because the entire scene this comes from builds around how they didn't need weapons or armament or even really special clothing to survive on Thundera, because it was that peaceful at the time that they were living in. So saying they're naked isn't quite accurate, but it kind of misses the point too. And I'm going to go through some of these a little quicker because, a lot of stuff. The Thundercats costumes are a little too sexy. That's completely subjective. If you look at Panthro and you think he's attractive, that's your moral value system. If you like Earl Hyman whispering and sweet nothings in your ear to keep off his Samaflans, that's up to you. I disagree. Let's see here. The Sword of Omens powers makes no sense. Yes, let's talk about the real-life powers a magical sword should have and how they should all make sense for a magical sword to have powers. Early on, the powers of the Thundercats' mystical Sword of Omens seems pretty clear. It magically extends from dagger length to a full sword. Well, it's technically a long sword. They're both types of swords. It casts a big red cat signal into the sky. It allows Lion-O to see great distances. It fires energy beams. Blah, blah. It goes Deus Ex Machina. Well, yes, it's literally the source of their power, dummy. Let's see. Like a Green Lantern ring. Here's a funny thing. A lot of the things they do talk about in these cases, because there's another article with a similar list. A lot of the things they list happened in the early parts of the show. So trying to say it got worse as time went on isn't quite accurate. Let's see here. A magical sword with many uses is fine. Oh, so we're the arbitrators now. But an adult viewer, it's pretty glaring how the writers would just give the Sword of Omens a new power anytime they needed a way out of the problem with no solution. Or, if you want to be honest here, it could be used as, character and world building. Because from what I can tell, and this isn't canonized, it's just personal opinion, it seems to me the Sword of Omens works on faith. When Lion-O doesn't think it'll work, it doesn't work. When he does, it wrecks everything. Everything. Okay, Majimaru, Panthro is clean. He is essential clean. He is Mr. Clean Thundera. Not going to argue that point. Let's see. Well, nothing's weirder looking than the Cats movie. That's just uncanny. Snarf is annoying because his life is... Oh, boy. Snarf banishing. Always fun. Because when you are a Gen Xer or a literal millennial, keep in mind, I'm talking about people closer to my generation, not kids. If you really want to make people think you know Thundercats, just make fun of Snarf. That's just an automatic shoe-in. They'll totally fall for it. I'm not going to go too much into this because it's stupid. Snarf is a surrogate parent who found out his job has been cut short and is trying to find his place. If you are a parent, you will, especially moms, oddly enough, you'll identify with Snarf more than you will any other character, because what he says, in context of the fact that he has no powers and he cares about his surrogate son, makes sense. It's really, this is my favorite, it's really obvious when a character is introduced just to sell a toy. Let's talk about this one. Cartoons in the 80s were meant to sell toys, everybody knows that. Not going to click on that because it's not worth it. No. Factually incorrect. Factually incorrect. Let's say that 80% were. And that's being me being very generous. Grim here could probably break it down to deeper percentages, but, When you watch as an adult, though, it can be particularly glaring, and Thundercats is one of the worst in that regard. It's totally not Transformers, right? Girl Who Loved Power Glide, anybody? Their headquarters, the cat's lair, white and blue and shaped like a giant panther, was a nondescript cat. Could not look any more like a plastic playset. Have you seen the schematics they've done? They really literally did blueprints of the external and internal of Cat's Lair. The actual playset that they produced for it was based on the original concept art, and only the color casting wound up later on. It's nothing built like a playset. It's too elaborate to be. The same goes for the Thunder Tank, an open cockpit vehicle that scoots around Third Earth like it's being pushed by a giant invisible shroud. Have you seen how a tank moves? Good lord. And for one example, a space pirate named Hammerhand. Hammerhand's not from space. He's a Viking. He's literally only been on Third Earth in a giant Viking Yor boat. He has a big and very easy to pose robotic arm. Have you played with the Hammerhand toy? It is not easy to pose. More importantly, I want to point to something out here, okay? Now, Hammerhand was introduced in the first season of Thundercats, right? Where he died, got resurrected. His Season 1 and Season 2 designs are completely different. And oddly enough, that is due to toys, but not in the way you would think. Hammerhand and his Berserkers were given toys by LJN that were completely different than their animation models. And they did this because it looked more uniform. So when they utilized that in the show, number one, his robotic arm changed from his left arm to his right arm. And more importantly, what happened afterwards is they only introduced toy elements specifically when they thought it would be neat. It was one of the 80s cartoons that was almost completely divorced from the toy production. So this is just a bunch of malarkey to begin with. Let's see here, looking at the chat. Correct. Let's see here. Precure, huh? I've heard a lot of good things about that. Price tag pop. That would be great. Buy it now in stores. Let's see here. Now, I think, yeah, that's the end of this, but I want to move on. I want to move on to some fun here. So now, Grim, you're going to love this one. You got to go all the way back up because I read through this one because it was so amazing. This one's amazing. Things only adults notice in He-Man. Oh boy! More cynical circle jerking. This is going to be fun. Not going to deal with it. How can a skeleton have muscles? Yours does. Everyone's does. He's a demon from another dimension. Literally in Diamond Ray of Disappearance, that's what he's identified as. Holy crap. Skeletor is a demon from another dimension. You're arguing the physiology of a mystical being. Why don't you go ahead and go argue, I don't know, the giant spaghetti monster? Prince Adam is a Clark Kent of eternity. You don't say. It's almost like Superman's the linchpin for a lot of modern hero fiction. It's almost like he's the first really well-known superhero, and a lot of characters are built off him. It's almost like even DC admits that without him, their multiverse shatters. You don't say. The Superman argument. I love this. It couldn't possibly be explained due to the fact that, you know, they had budgeting limitations because Lou Scheimer wanted to pay his people like working people instead of slaves, but, you know, whatever. The whole thing is a toy commercial. Well, no. It did try to sell product. I'm not going to deny that. But you're acting, the hint of this is always, well, the writing was poor because XYZ. The people who wrote He-Man and the Masters of the Universe are the same people who wrote Beast Wars. Don't sit here and tell me they're not decent writers, or that they didn't do a good job, or that they didn't put their world building first and foremost. Look at He-Man. Look at it objectively. Don't look at it through the eyes of cynicalness. Look at it how somebody would build a story. This is asinine. Oh no, we're going to pick on Mechaneck, a guy with a telescoping neck, or Buzz-Off, a man-sized... Oh no, not absurd concepts in fiction. You don't say. How is it the people who sit here and ridicule this treat Batman like he's just the top tier, you know? And I love Batman, but everything in fiction's ridiculous. Everything in fiction is ridiculous by nature. Really, Grim? I thought they did. I could be wrong, though. Eternia is a horrible place. Oh my god, I'm getting an aneurysm. It's almost like when you build a fictional world with metahuman heroes and metahuman villains, it's going to be inherently more troubling and more dangerous than the real world. What are you talking about? Dedicated kid viewers of He-Man and the Masters of the Universe were all in for the show's main conceit. Conceit? Really? Conceit? What? with the prize being to rule over, at minimum, the planet Eternia. Well, technically Skeletor would have to get past a lot of other things, just He-Man, but anyways. Mirroring the Cold War politics that citation needed, He-Man stood for justice and freedom. He's a hero, you don't say. Well, Skeletor was a selfish, power-mad, totalitarian dictator. Wait, mirroring the Cold War politics... Are you saying the Cold War politics were justice and freedom versus selfish, power-mad, totalitarian dictatorship? Because, wow, that's a bubbling and on the floor because you burned yourself take. Good lord. In nearly every episode, He-Man and Battle-Cat had to venture to some cave, volcano, mountain, or swamp to defeat locations, or recover some magical artifact to defeat Skeletor's forces. Usually, if I'm not mistaken, it's Skeletor who found them and they had to counter that. Anyway, seeing all this, adults might wonder, why the fuss over Eternia? Because it sits at the center of creation. Literally, Castle Grayskull is the nexus point of their multiverse. It appears to be a largely uninhabitable wasteland. Well, half of it, the Dark Hemisphere, but even it's habited, shrouded by darkness with a terrain covered in swamps, punishing rock formations and other inhabitable geographic... Have you looked at the planet Earth? At all? Just a little bit? Beyond that, He-Man bravely protects the people who somehow reside in this nightmare Neptune. What? Except there don't seem to be... There's plenty of people. You didn't watch the show, did you? So it's all about, you Googled it. On occasion, he occasionally ends up in a random Eternian cities, but wide swaths of the planet don't have any civilization to speak of. Aim high, Skeletor. Like, there's folly in a kingdom, or having a kingdom with no subjects. Like, why would Skeletor want to rule over nothingness? Good lord. Let's see here. I want to look at the chat here. Terror of Death. We are... Ooh, that's a Doom Eternal thing, isn't it? We are going through some clickbaity articles written by big brain people about 80s cartoons. Let's see here. All right. And the Keldor just popped up. Yeah, that was really weird, the Keldor inclination. Anywho. Some of those characters' names are quite suggestive. I mean, if you're a pervert, these people were designing things for children. Like, they literally were going to make Merman's name Seaman without thinking about the implications because they were under a time crunch and they needed to get these things out. These people just didn't sit there and go, we make him sound like pee-pee. That's not how this works. He-Man and the Masters of the Universe and everything else was obviously based on some previously released pop culture phenomenon. Citation needed. A muscle-bound guy in a loincloth fighting monsters in a strange world? That's some straight-up Arnold Schwarzenegger and Conan... Fantasy has existed for a very long time. Le Morte d'Arthur has existed for a very long time. And you think everything is based on the Arnold Schwarzenegger Conan movie. Conan borrowed plenty of sci-fi and fantasy tropes, so now we're talking about the books? We talking about the popes? What are we talking about? He-Man does the same. It's almost like people borrow ideas and build on them. Oh my god. It's just that adults will notice the cribbing is especially lazy. He-Man is an old phrase that means manly man. And Superman's better, Batman's better, Aquaman's better. I don't see your article about that. And they just use it as a name for the main guy of the entire franchise. Your point? Other hilariously and hastily named characters. The skeleton named Skeletor. Oh, you would have loved to have seen his pre-production name. Demo Man, Demon Man. Yeah. And a sorceress named the Sorceress. Well, probably because it's a title, it's not a name. We don't know her name. Moron. Conan in space. But at least those are innocuous. Oh, you don't say. Writers should have looked up a few other character names in a slang dictionary. Did you have one in the 80s? Because He-Man was made in 1981. The cartoon was made in 1983. Show me a slang dictionary that was available at the time. Some of the people on the show for children have somewhat sexual names. For example, there's Ram Man because his head's a battering ram. Batter Man would have been far worse. A man who likes to ram things with his head, yes. And Fisto, a dude with a giant fist who loves to shove that fist wherever he's able. He punches things. He's got a big fist. If you have a perverted mind, that's on you. You don't get to project out onto other people and try to play pretend it's their problem. Almost as much as the character's outfits. Oh no! Barbarian fiction has barbarian outfits. Oh, someone think of the literal children this was made for. There might not be many people or much modern civilization. There's plenty of modern. They're a space traveling people. Oh my god. But there must be plenty of gyms. Yes, I'd imagine there are. You gotta keep fit. Every single character on He-Man and Masters of the Universe is in fantastic shape. Do you want to watch a television show where a bunch of overweight people run around? It's a pretty common staple for fiction to be in shape. All the male good guys and bad guys are ripped as professional bodybuilders, and with enormous muscles covering each. Do you have a complex? Is that what this is about? Maybe you should go to the gym, man. It really helps. The women, meanwhile, are slender with ample bosoms, adhering to the difficult-to-attain 80s standard of beauty. Is now a bad time to mention that most of these were rotoscoped from actual people? Is now a bad time to mention that? Difficult to attain, I see. With the battle of good versus evil that constantly plagues Eternia, it also plagues Earth. It plagues reality. But your Cold War take, I guess, wasn't hot enough. It's hard to imagine how the men have 4 days to lift weights. Well, not really, because you don't even need that much for He-Man's type of build. Well, technically, it's not realistic in the sense of if you actually look at the toy and you measure out its weight, it's physically not possible. It's fantasy. But to get a similar build, you don't have to work out 4 hours a day. Maybe 1 every other day. Or how the women fit in Pilates, yoga, and aerobics they must be doing on a regular. Tila trains. The sorceress literally just guards the castle. I'm pretty sure her physiology is kept by the castle's magic. Oh no, this hasn't broken me. We ain't getting started yet. Was the power sword made of steel? Now this is actually an interesting thing I looked into in this article. He's not wrong about the fact that the He-Man intro is similar to the intro of this show called Steel, Remington Steel. It's really interesting. I actually tried to do a little bit of diving on it, but I couldn't find the connection between Shuki Levy and the composer of this. Grim, you might want to take a look at this. It's actually really interesting. Castle Grayskull is truly disturbing. You don't say. You don't say. It's a skull-faced castle that's a nexus point of multiverses that is, by its nature, neutral. The central conflict of He-Man and the Masters of the Universe is the one between He-Man and Skeletor, vying for control of Eternia, respectively representing the forces of good and evil. Much of that power apparently derives from the Castle Grayskull, a mystical ancient structure mostly uninhabited and in disrepair in spite of all of its glories. Well, I wonder why. Stone's not easy to fix. From the looks of it, Castle Grayskull is apparently constructed out of bones? It's constructed out of stone, dummy. Have you not looked at other Gothic architecture buildings? Have you not seen a gargoyle or a grotesque? Holy crap, you're stupid. Looks really... He said ancient castle, dummy. Castle Grayskull, to an adult who has taken a history class or two, looks positively ghoulish. And unlike the undiscovered remains of a violent, brutal dictator who used the bones of his enemies to build a monument in... Have you seen Vlad the Impaler's castle? Because it doesn't look like Grayskull. And that is a legitimately terrifying human being. He-Man, we're like, man. Oh, here's where you apply real-world ideology and put it on a child show with severe limitations. According to the Masters of the Universe lore, He-Man is the most powerful individual well, technically, no. According to the Masters of the Universe lore, he's the most powerful man in the universe, man denoting humanity, or Hugh-Man. Because there are characters, individually, that are more powerful than He-Man, such as Evil Seed, God, I forgot, Shigora. Characters like that who individually are more powerful than He-Man as it is. Grimm actually explained to me that, I guess, He-Man only has a part of Grayskull's power. It's a bit complicated depending on the canon. But anyways, the physical strength to pick up enemies and fling them around, he pushed a moon. And the power sword, a much-coveted Excalibur-like relic, well, not really. Excalibur was inherently magical. It seems to me like, other than some traits, the power sword tends to be mostly a conduit. Granted, it's indestructible and it's horribly absurdly strong, but anyways, despite those gifts, He-Man is surprisingly wishy-washy. Sure, it's probably because He-Man and the Masters of the Universe is a non-serialized. They do make callbacks, dude. And things you get back to the status quo at the end of it, well, not really, but He-Man, curiously, almost lazily, never uses much of the power afforded to him. He always lets the bad guys get away. Even Skeletor, king of the bad guys, knows he'll be back to fight Skeletor another day, which means irresponsibly letting him flee to his headquarters, from which he can continue his campaign of terror. He could have made life easier for the people of Eternia, wherever they are, by ending this war and killing Skeletor with the power sword the first chance he gets, and then you wouldn't have a series. But also, that's not who He-Man is. That's one of my major issues with the modern comics. He-Man doesn't just gutlessly kill characters if he can help it, especially not Filmation He-Man. And you're also dealing with standards and practices. You could not show He-Man punching a villain in the face. You could show him throwing the punch and you could show them flying back, but the connection could not be shown. It was against standards and practices. Let's see here. Horrible bosses stars. The main villain's a bad boss, you don't say. Oh, here's my fun one. Here's my favorite. He-Man über alles. There's a lot of iconography in Masters of the Universe. Eternia has a royal family, so they're probably got a coat of arms. They do, actually. The sorceress is dressed like a bird, and so that seems meaningful. And most of the action of the show involves He-Man and or Skeletor doing something to, near, or with the power of Grayskull or the Power Sword. Well, mostly Grayskull, because that's Skeletor's schemes. He's not really sure in the show the connection for the Power Sword. It stands to reason that if He-Man was going to wear a symbol on what very little clothing he wears, it would be something evoking of those things. But no, his cross-the-chest armor with a little tiny plate at the center, He-Man rocks what has seemingly nothing to do with anything else on Eternia or the franchise. It does, however, look especially troubling like the Iron Cross. It's a symbol used by Nazis. The Iron Cross, specifically, has an outline, a black, a white buffer, and then an internal inline filled of this cross. He-Man's not wearing an Iron Cross. If you want to be honest about this, what He-Man's technically wearing is the Cross of the Knights Templar. And that's probably because He-Man's on what is, I guess, assuming a crusade against evil. They probably didn't want the chest piece to just be bare, so they gave him something a real warrior would wear. And the Knights Templar, on their gambesons, or not gambesons, on their outer cloth, outside the chainmail, would wear a giant red cross, just like this. An Iron Cross, as Grimm is saying, was either dark gray or black, like iron. This is red. The Templar's cross is always red. He-Man recycled before it was cool. Oh, Grimm's going to love this one. Even today, animation is a labor-intensive, expensive craft. Think back to the early 80s then, when He-Man and Masters of the Universe aired. Production company Filmation turned out 65 episodes per season, and the crew necessarily had to find some shortcuts. Kids with no frame of reference who let magic, wonder, and the spectacle of He-Man and the Masters of the Universe wash over them wouldn't notice, but adults with a cynical eye will certainly spot the show's cost-cutting measures. I find it amazing. You don't, in this article, mention why they kept the budget. It's because Lou Scheimer wanted to keep the animation within the United States. He wanted to pay his people a decent wage with the limited budget Mattel gave him. You're not talking about this man's humane effort. You're not talking about how much he cared about the people who worked for him. You're taking a shot at the show because cynical adults... My parents couldn't have cared less about recycled animation, and in this case, I don't either. Because it was done because a man cared about his crew. What's wrong with you? Let's see here. Time to go to Io9, people. Hope you're ready. 12 insane things you totally forgot about the Thundercats. Let me go ahead. Rob Bricken wrote this. We're going to look at him in a minute. Lionel was actually a little kid. Yes, we covered this. Yeah, I woke up on Third Earth nude. No. They woke up on Third Earth after their ship crashed in the suspension capsules, fully clothed, with their iconic outfits. So you're already wrong, one in. There were actually plenty of humans on the show, so this is the inverse of one of the other articles. Third Earth is actually deserted. You don't say. It's almost like it's in the name. Snarf's real name was Osbert. You pulled that out of the wiki, didn't you, big boy? The members of Snarf's race are just called Snarfs. Members of the human race are just called humans. And so the Thundercats can't be bothered to weren't... What? No. He doesn't like the name Osbert. That's why he had the Thundercats and everybody just call him Snarf, because he didn't like his name. And Snarf didn't go to college. Snarfer did. Snarfer went to college. The joke was, college kid think he's smart. Mumm-Ra had a dog. Yes, he had a dog. And it's nothing like Muttley and Dick Dastardly. Oh, God. The Sword of Omens was the most ridiculous deus machina in all of fiction. Name fiction that doesn't have it. I'll give you $20. Let's see here. Seriously, when the show started out, Lion-O's had Sword had a set list of powers. It extended, it flashed the Thundercat signal, gave him sight beyond sight, and even allowed to shoot energy beams. Fine, by the second season started, the writers even stopped trying to send stories. Well, no. They actually had a whole bunch of writers pining to write stories for the show. And the Sword of Omens literally did anything the plot required it to. It cured the Thundercats of anything from illness, that happened in one episode, to being hit by a shrink-weight. That was actually in the earlier part of the show, an early first season. It also turned into a pole vault, so Lion-O could pull. That was also in the early part of the show. It didn't have a set list to begin with. You could fly on it literally the second episode. You could control the weather in one episode. Yes, most insanely, the Thundercats logo, the sword, would project. By the end of the series, the logo was actually attacking bad guys and doing things like pressing buttons for Lion-O. Actually, it was doing the pressing buttons a while before that. At least to the episode Sword of the Whole. And yes, it does project a giant cat, because the Sword of Omens and the Eye of Thundera are sentient. They are a living thing. Thundera was destroyed because of the Thundercat stupidity. This goes back to the Jaga argument. I would love for you to tell me, because you see here, you couldn't have hidden the Sword of Plundar in a storage unit or something. Yes, hide the sentient, evil, demonic sword in a storage unit and expect nobody to get it. Did you expect a sword to blow up your planet? This is where fiction meets reality, and they don't agree. Your point is irrelevant. It is asinine because you're forgetting fiction's fiction. It once featured a character called a Tongue of Swords. It was like a 10-second portion of one episode. It's not a feature. The Thundercats could exist in the vacuum of space. Well, technically no, because within the world of Thundercats, Silverhawks, and I believe even Tiger Sharks, space wasn't a vacuum. It's kind of overlooked, but it's consistent throughout the shows. That's all that comes down to. Welcome to fiction. You can do anything. Snarf has a nephew. Ah, you mean the one that you forgot is the one that went to college? It's impossible to forget Snarf, the hideous, obweskis, obnoxious thing that hung around with the... I'm sorry your parents didn't treat you well. And made Orko for Master of the Universe like a charming, uber competent... I mean, I liked Orko. He's fairly competent. More competent than the article you've written here, buddy boy. All Snarf did was mutter unfunny lines. It wasn't supposed to be funny. Was just saying something, do something horribly stupid the Thundercats would have to fix. No. Oftentimes, Snarf bailed other people out. I'm pretty sure you've all repressed the existence of Snarfer. Snarf's even more annoying nephew. Hey, he got everybody burble Mexican food. You shut your hole. Scrappy-Doo of Thundercats. Dude, do you know Scrappy-Doo? Because, like, it's a mess. I don't care about the Urban Dictionary, you dummy. Thundercats are loose, but not so loose that they approve of underage drinking. Even when I was 8, I knew that every time I heard Snarf talk, I wanted a shot of whiskey. Did that do brain damage? Is that why you wrote this list? Let's look at your other stuff here. Let's see here. Rob Bricken was the editor of Io9 from 2016 to 2018, the creator of the poorly named but fan favorite news site called Topless Robot. Ah, no wonder you're an idiot. And now writes nerd stuff for many places because it's all he's good. Well, if that's all he's good at, he might not want to pursue it because apparently he sucks at it. Let's see here. I really don't want to scroll through all this because this guy just seems stupid. So we're gonna close you. We're gonna close you. All right. So this is from Comic Book Resources. This Thundercats Alf fan theory is the most 80s thing you'll ever read. I generally don't deal with fan theories, but let me go ahead and look at the chat here. Nobody forgets Lion-O as a kid. Nobody. Actually, Grim, I saw that video. That's why I cut Scrappy-Doo a lot of slack. I understand the thought process going into him now. Anywho, I usually don't tackle fan theories, but this one's so stupid, I've got to. Not every fan theory is a serious dissection of lore and continuity. Try sometime, buddy. Some are simply hilarious, while Thundercats and Alf are beloved, yet wildly different properties of the 80s. It's difficult to deny they were a little silly. Name fiction does not. I dare you. Go ahead, bring out Game of Thrones. I'll have some fun with that, talking about Dragon, or whatever the thing's name is. About how you have the Lannisters and everybody having some incestuous plot. Literally incestuous. You want to talk about silly? Fiction is it. So why would one of their fans devise a crazy link between the two? Because people have too much time on their hands and they don't read. Let's go down here. Oh, I love that they use the 2011. Brilliant. Brilliant. Thundercats, Thundaras, huh? Already leading with your right foot, huh? Citizens were eaten by Alf's planet of Melmax, causing civil war. We know while Thundara is ostensibly full of life, at least plant life, given the many jungles. No? Did this person mix up Third Earth and Thundera? Anyways, there's next to no Thundercats. Of the Thundercats, the only living ones are a single pride of militarized people with impressive but limited tech. Buddy, they can space hop between planets. In fact, there is next to 0 non-military technologies in all of Thundera. What? Of which there is little and is dispersed among much cruder implements of warlike clubs and swords. What? As if their society was destroyed by an advanced civilization that they picked up the remains. No, Thundera, when you actually look at it, they're absurdly high-tech. Like, the Thundercats use martial art weapons because it's neat, and it drives the story forward a little bit more enjoyably than guns. We also know that Alf's species had mastered space travel. Is that why none of them ever picked him up? Alf crash lands on Earth. So what if Alf actually worked as a probe? So now it's Earth, to report on his findings of valuable products. So it would make sense if he were on a mission to study Earth itself, that he would have been a party or at least chief biologist and geologist. However, as a single mission, it could have stand a reason Alf was an independent contractor for a Melmacian goods company. If Alf crashed onto Earth, it would stand to reason the Melmacians have sent several probes to inspect many planets for valuable goods. What if one of those planets was Thundera? They would have died. They would have died. The Melmacians would have died. I propose that planet Melmac had an all-out invasion of planet Thundera with, all of 2 feet of them? Using their superior technology, can you display this superior technology? Because last I checked, Alf couldn't even get a radio signal back to his planet. To easily defeat and kill the Thunderans, a la Signs, during this invasion, a few survivors managed to stave off roving bands of these cat-devouring psychopaths. You can just kick them in the face. They're shin high. These lucky few were the ancestors of the Thundercats. Well, no, that makes no sense. This person doesn't know either of these shows, does he? After the invasion ended, the remaining Thunderans were torn over governmental leadership and broke into 2 main parties: followers of the old ways, the followers of enlightenment, reverse engineering a vital few components of Melmacian technology. The followers of enlightenment beat back the followers of the old ways and killed their leader, Mumra. Yeah, good luck killing an immortal character. Through voodoo of the ancient spirits of evil, Mumra survives as a mummy cat-like What? And continues his Luddite battle against the technology that destroyed his species, and whom he feels betrayed the gods, albeit sometimes resorting to using technology itself, but generally preferring magic. The Thundercats now spend most of their time attempting to find and reverse engineer Melmacian technology. Is this supposed to be directed to the 2011 series? The Thundercats' ancestors were abducted and eaten by Alf's species. Fun fact is, I'd actually prefer this to what they were going to reveal about the second season of 2011 cartoon. According to Shumway's species is known to have a taste for cats. Yes, it's an ongoing gag. So why wouldn't it want to harvest an entire planet of cat people? Because they'd get killed. The conflict would have been vicious, driving the Thunderians... Oh, now we can spell Thunderians. To the brink of extinction. The battle would have ended with the Thunderians pushing back the Melmacs. But at what cost? In attempting to rebuild, society will be divided into 2 factions. A conservative group, oh boy, hoping to return to the old ways of magic and mysticism. The source of power. Their life force. For the Thundercats and Thunderians as a whole, it's literally the Eye of Thundera, a mystical gem embedded in a magic sword. You are an idiot, and a progressive faction hoping to use Melmac technology to rebuild society. It's almost like both these things can be used. The Thundercats will be the product of the progressive society, so there goes the Sword of Omens, while Mumra and his ilk will be the figureheads of the conservative, regressive faction. Yes, Mumra often talks about conservative things. He's completely against socialism. He's not a dictator at all. Alf saying the N-words. Oh my god. That sounds hilarious. I'm not gonna lie, that sounds funny. Alright. Next one. 20 things only real fans know about the Sword of Omens. Well, one thing you're getting wrong is the logo. That's a fan edit. Like, somehow even Warner Brothers is using this now. I don't know what dumpster you were diving in or how much glue you ate, but it's not hard to find the real thing. The sword would never cut anyone. Well, no, that's not true. It did. The Sword of Omens is what killed Lion-O's grandfather. But, I'm sorry, I actually know this series. Let's see, are a group of Thundercats called a Pride? No, they're not. Let's see here. The sword can be broken. Yes, it can. It can be broken usually when Lion-O doubts its abilities. Let's see here. The sword fixed the planet. Well, it didn't fix the planet. It held it together long enough to get a gyroscope back up and running. So the Sword of Omens held together New Thundera's gravity, which kind of makes it absurdly powerful, which I'm okay with. Snarf used the sword, yes, a couple of times. We're going to get into that a little bit further. It cuts almost anything, except for people, according to you. Isn't that amazing? It's a fictional sword. The sword is cursed. Well, the sword itself is not cursed. If the sword is attempted to be used against another Thundercat in aggression to actually hurt them, what falls upon it is called the Curse of Balthaz, meaning that the sword goes completely dormant. And the only way to fix it is to reforge it in Starfire. Because when you dick up to that level, you gotta pay. And it's gonna suck for you. The sword is alive. Yes, it has a sentient gemstone called the Eye of Thundera. Holy crap. The signal breaks through anything. We found that out in the 3rd episode. The Lord of the Thunder... Oh, this one's fun. Who uses a Sword of Omens? If you've only seen the show only once, you would think the answer is Io9. In fact, Io9 is only one of a long line of Thundera's leaders who carries the sword as part of being the responsibility and privileges of Lord of the Thundercats. The lords were members of the royal family of Thundera. Well, not necessarily. A title passed down from father to son for centuries. Along with the responsibility of leading the Thundercats, lords also get the Sword of Omens, along with the Eye of Thundera, to defend the planet and its people. Before Io9, his father Claudius had the sword, and used to help save his race. It's not something just the Lord of the Thundercats can use. Also, he's sitting here talking about how it's passed from father to son. Jaga is not related to Io9 or Claudius. Here's the truth about the Sword of Omens. As we've seen in other episodes, like All That Glitters, it doesn't matter who uses a sword so long as they're good. And as long as their intentions are pure. It doesn't matter if it's Snarf. It doesn't matter if it's Willa. It doesn't matter. The sword responds to fighting evil. That's its entire purpose. It's a reversal of the chosen one archetype. Io9 isn't chosen to wield the sword. The sword works for whomever fights evil. And yes, they did use 2011. The reflection is a weapon. Well, number one, it's only a weapon against Mumra and only for the first season. It wasn't nobody forging the Sword of Omens. When Tigris forged it, he didn't say, need to make sure it can reflect. Got a mummy in the near future. The Sword of Omens versus Excalibur. Yes, the most powerful sword in fiction. Excalibur beat the Sword of Omens. Oddly enough, in the original show notes, they weren't supposed to fight, and I still don't know why that changed. Ooh boy. Totally. Evil can't touch the sword. Getting more power is Mumra's one and only goal, and he thinks that getting his hands on the Sword of Omens is a good way to do it. He's actually managed to grab it a few times, but his goal isn't really that simple. Again, using the 2011 one. But that's because the Sword of Omen only allows good people with... You just said only the Lord of the Thundercats, and now you're coming back to this, which Mumra definitely doesn't have. Even Io9 can't use the Sword of Omens for evil. Nobody can. In the 2011 reboot, there was an enchantment that kept anyone evil from even holding it. Well, no. It kept Mumra from holding it. It literally was held by Groon and the Dueler. The sword can power others. Yes, it can. Basic. The Sword of Omen's origin. The 2011 reboot provided a new origin for many of the elements of Thundercats. In 2011, it was a war gem. Basically, it wasn't specific to the Thundercats themselves. It was taken from some other race. It was put into the sword. It became alive. Now, this is where it gets a little different. According to the Wildstorm comics, which are technically supposed to be in continuity with the 1985 show, the Sword of Omens was forged by a blacksmith named Tigris. Either Tigris or Tigris. It was written, so it's kind of hard to figure out pronunciated. And the Eye of Thundera was put into it at behest of Lord Kugartha. Now, in the UK comics, the Sword of Omens is an ancient relic that was chipped out of a mountainside when another Lord of Thundera from the ancient times, some Leonis the Wanderer, found it in a lava basin. It was placed there by Catamountain, who is to Thundercats essentially what Moses is to the Bible. So, personally, I think that's a more rich lore. I find that absolutely fascinating. And yes, that was a funny moment, Grim. The eye has psychic powers. It doesn't. It's one of the few things it does not have. In Groon the Destroyer, Io9 tried to use the sword to find out about Groon, and he found out, quote Tigra, the sword has no psychic powers. Chitara, oddly enough, is the one that does. And the funny thing about that is it seems the Sword of Omens departs abilities onto other people, because it's the source of their power. So while the Sword of Omens does not have that psychic power, it apparently can grant it to Chitara. But another thing we saw in Thundercats was Lion-O using the Sword of Omens to give him sight beyond sight. That's not psychic power. That's enhanced vision. He will hold the sword up to his eye. Sword basic, that's not psychic. Holy crap, you're stupid. The sword makes force fields. Yes, we saw that in the second episode. The sword could shoot lasers. We also saw that in the second episode. Not on the arm. Like any good weapon, the Sword of Omens came with its own accessories. There's only come to a time when the sword was to be put away. It came with a claw shield. The claw shield looked like a furry lion's paw. The claw shield has never, ever in animation been depicted as furry. It is literally steel because it is a shield, and often Lion-O used its reflective surface. But it could block incoming fire by wearing it on your arm. The sword also fit neatly inside. There was a major rule that never got followed. In the original design, it is explicitly stated that the sword couldn't be worn in the claw shield when it was on Lion-O's arm. Well, yes, that is true. So somehow you got that notation from the model sheet, but you dicked up the rest of this article. Congratulations, Scooter. That went out the window of the actual show where he wore the sword on his arm all the time. No word on why he didn't cut up his forearm, because when a blade on its flat, which is not the cutting edge, on its flat, is on your arm, it cannot cut you. The Sword of Omens is not an Omni blade. It's not a lightsaber. It only cuts with the edges. It's like putting the flat of a butter knife on your arm and wiggling your arm around. You're not going to cut yourself. Holy crap. The sword can make objects. Did it make this? I thought the sword wasn't capable of evil. The sword can control the weather. Yes, in one instance it did. Alright, moving on because we're 46 minutes in. 15 things even diehard fans didn't know about Lion-O. Let's find out. Let's find out. He can control all cats. Diehard fans didn't need to know that. Everybody knew that watched this show. He fought He-Man, yes, and he won. And that entire book series was garbage. The Sword of Omens is a Deus Ex Machina. Yeah, you guys don't know writing. He's fought Superman, yes, and no. That fight made no sense. At all. He-Man, he's a child, and everybody goes through this. And they all use the same picture. He's the fastest Thundercat. Well, no, he's not. He took advantage of a shortcut because it was supposed to show his leadership abilities and ability to work outside of his own strengths. The Claw Shield is multi-versatile. Oh, you don't say. It's almost like if you watch one episode of the show, you'll figure that out. He has super smell. Oh, this must be great. Being the superhero that he is, Lion-O has a nice assortment of power. Leader of the Thundercats, Lion-O possesses super strength and agility. His cat-like heritage also gives him a couple extra perks. A keen sense of smell might not be someone's super to-go powers, but heroes like Wolverine, blah, blah, blah. Lion-O takes that... So you haven't actually cited a part in fiction where he has. So this isn't about super fans. This is about you making stuff up. Now, what would have been really interesting, a lion's ears has about, I think, 50 individual muscles to pick up different sounds. That would have been neat. There's a lot of really neat things about big cats. Let's see here. Lion-O wasn't his original name. You're right. It was originally going to be Lion-L. And the reason why is because Lion-O trains didn't want brand confusion, and they were very cognizant of that. Yes, there were a lot of character names. Chitara was going to be Cheetah-R. Jago was going to be Jaguar. It's like they were really obsessed with the cat single letter thing, and thankfully they got away from it. Because Tiger would have been really irritating compared to Tigra. The Sword of Omens can be a boomerang. It can be whatever it wants, honestly. The Eye of Thundera is a source that... It's in the first episode. Oh my god. He can survive the vacuum of space. Already talked about the Sword of Omens can't be used by evil beings. Well, it can't be used by evil beings, and it can't be used for evil. He has supervision. More made-up stuff. Why don't you actually look up what a lion's vision is capable of? Sword of Omens is not unbreakable. You're correct. The sword itself can be broken. Alright, moving on here. I think we're about halfway done. Yes, Mijumaru. Cats in general have a lot of muscles in their ears. If you'll notice when they twitch it in certain ways, like if a cat's looking at something and you see their ear moving, they're checking for other sounds. It's really fascinating. Thundercats, the 15 most valuable Thundercat toys you wish you kept. Could have gotten better examples here. Missing Chitara's staff, Pantero's nunchucks, and Mumra's dignity. Battlematic Lion-O. I mean, Most people still have him. Taking out of the package, going for $899 on eBay. Well, specific variants, yes. Very specific ones. Thunderwings Lino, I actually have him behind me. He can be expensive. It all depends on who you get it from. If he's still in mint condition, the figure itself you can get for around $400 to $500. Mint on card, you might look at the $600 to $700, but very rarely. Very rarely. How old is this list? Does it tell you when it was made? Only 3 years ago, so no, these numbers aren't accurate. The Mad Bubbler. The funny thing about Mad Bubbler is I'm not really sure if he ever got to store shelves. I think most of this is just recasting from the prototype. But no, he goes for around $800. Mum-Ra with Luna Lasher. They're actually using a custom toy in this one. There is no existing Mum-Ra that has purple on him. Like, that's from... Well, I mean, there is one, but nobody's found it yet, to my knowledge. So this is actually a fan custom. It was in some advertising material in the late 80s. And yeah, he goes for about $450. For the record, Luna Lasher Mum-Ra and Thunderwings Lino for the uninitiated. They are the same figures as the original release, but they don't have the Battle-O-Matic action switches in their backs and they don't have light-up eyes. So they're just basic figures. But because they lack those features and they were rare, they're sought after. Mum-Ra's Tomb Fortress. Let's see here. How much did it say? Well, right now, oddly enough, they're wrong on this in the opposite direction. You're going to have a hard time finding Mum-Ra's Tomb Fortress out of box for $250. It is a mess. Chitara. She's really hard to find. No, she's not. For $220 unopened. Well, yeah. Any figure on card is going to be more expensive. I got Tigra and Hachiman here. Panthro. So are you just going to list out random ones on freaking card? If you were to find a toy now, it would cost you under $10, which is low end for some figures. Well, no, like Panthro doesn't usually go for $110. Let's see the old variation of Tigra. Let's see here. No, he's pretty cheap because unlike the other figures, his bolo weapon's really easy to reproduce, so it's kind of hard to tell when you have an original one. The Cat Slayer, though, I wish. Pay attention. It says $370. I wish it was that low. Right now, these suckers are going for $800. Crap, that's crazy. Bengali, yeah, he can go for a bit. Yeah, this one's also a little bit more pricey, usually about $500-$600. Driller, oh god. This dude, I saw a multi-language card of him at a toy show once for $450. Jaga. So it seems like this list, thankfully, out of all the others, isn't that bad. It's just inaccurate in terms of its pricing. Tongasaurus, that's a grail for a lot of people. I'm not really too concerned about it. Surprising 100. No, he ain't going for 150. That dude's going for a lot more. All right. 8 characters who ruled and 7 who were the worst. Let's find out about this list. Ruled. Lion-O. All right. The worst. Oh, of course, more snarf bashing from people who can't read between the lines. Ruled. Jaga. Got to use the 2011 version, the valued one. How could you say Panthro is one of the worst? He is objectively the coolest Thundercat. And I love Lion-O. He's my favorite. Panthro is on a different level, right? Panthro is the coolest black-coated character in the 80s. Don't come at me with your G.I. Joes. It's Panthro, okay? Panthro was supposed to be a wide sage, right up there with the Elder Leader Jaga, citation needed. However, he was pigeonholed as an engineer, citation needed. The man who built the gadgets and toys for the team, as opposed to a senior warrior that would have been guiding Lion-O more in his ascension as a lord. The time to make plans for a rainy day is when the sun is still shining. Panthro. Don't get us wrong, we love seeing Panthro kicking butt with his nunchucks, but we can't help but feel the character was shortchanged because you are stupid and didn't watch the show. Ruled Chitara, okay. The worst, Pumaira. Pumaira? She was underutilized. Ruled Linkso. And you're using a picture of Mum-Ra posing as him. Aren't you brilliant? The worst, the twins were just underutilized in some cases. They were children, you morons. Ruled Tigra. So, okay. Am I being punked? Look, I like Tigra. I do. but he was a stiff. That was his point. And granted, they didn't always write him the best. Never mind. The worst, the mutants were great. I don't know what you're going on about. Ruled, Groon to Destroy, using the 2011 one. Sorry, but 80s Groon had a better look. I understand him a little better. Thought he was neater. The worst, the Lunatics actually made a lot of sense. Because this broad here, I want to be very clear here. What's really fun is Thundercats, in terms of how it casted characters, was actually pretty progressive in the sense of what characters they made. In the second season, you had a main character, Linkso, who was disabled. He was blind. And he was a hero. But you also had the same on the other end. Luna here suffers from dwarfism. Every single character on this side over has a disability. And they're villains, and they're competent ones. At least for a while. Red Eye has problems with vision. He had to adapt his vision to the dark forests of the moons of Plundar. And Tugmug is literally legless. Like, these dudes still wreck shop for their first few appearances. And Luna here understood the actual value of teamwork, which is something the mutants didn't. What happened was ultimately the fact that they wound up going on a little bit too hard on the scripts. They were doing too much story building, and they wound up getting pushed to the sides. Ruled, the Robert Burbles, 2011 again. I prefer the original ones because they had more personality. The worst, Mumra. Mumra is part of the worst. Well, maybe in terms of evil, but in terms of character, no. Like, he was legitimately scary. He was a threatening character. He couldn't get the job done. What is it with these cynical articles and arguing about characters taking each other out, which was kind of pointless, ruining the series? Just stupid. Ruled the ancient spirit. So his bosses rule. His bosses that are questionably more incompetent than him because they keep throwing him at them. They ruled, but he didn't. Okay. I'm a former chemical engineer. You should have kept your job. Let's see here. Things you never knew about the Thundercats. Let's find out. Grim, it's your favorite. The mythology. What is this? No, I remember the mythology very well. Trying to get a hold of the story Bible. Limited edition Chitara action figure. Well, it's a Mezco 14-inch. And it wasn't limited. It's just you had to be in the know. And the small Snar figure, I think it was a San Diego Comic-Con exclusive. Lionel's real age. Well, his real age is like in early 20s. If you're talking about his mental age up until the middle of the series, it was 12. What is it with you thinking this is some sort of groundbreaking thing? Thundercats Ho was supposed to hit theaters. No, I remember. It was the Transformer movie that kind of killed that for a lot of places. It killed the G.I. Joe movie. It killed DuckTales. It killed the Rescue Rangers movie. It killed the Thundercats movie. Whoo boy. It did some damage. It's almost like when you kill your main cast, people don't want to watch your movie. Mia Jovovich wanted to play... I don't care. Lion-O ended up playing his own father. Yes, Larry Kenney reprised his role, or came back, rather, in the 2011 Thundercats to play Cloudus, Lion-O's father. He's currently playing Jaga and Roar. Probably contractually obligated to do so. Thundercats went live. This is actually fascinating, because footage of this and other images are lost media on the end of Thundercats fans. We would love to get a hold of some of this. Oddly enough, I wonder why this image is inversed. They had a psychologist read the scripts, yes, and comment on it. Because what they wanted to do, because Rankin Boss, Leonard Starr, they wanted a pro-social value show that would teach children something, but also be of quality. So what they did was they brought a child psychologist on board to go over scripts and make sure they would not damage children and that it would instruct them well. So they did good on that. I don't care about Jessica Alba. Yes, Grandpa Huxtable was a Thundercat. Matter of fact, let's see, did he go over that? No. This fun little thing is somebody asked him at one point, right? What were your thoughts when you were playing it? Because number one, oddly enough, it was one of his highest paid roles. Earl Hyman was a classically trained actor. He did Othello. He also did it in other languages. This man was very well classically trained. And when he was asked, how did you go with Thundercats? What was your thoughts in the booth? He's like, I just pretended like I was talking to my cats all day. And you can kind of tell. But I love it because he had that beautiful voice. I wish I could do it. Don't care about that. Yes, yes. Matter of fact, in this specific instance, Larry Kenney was very worried about doing the role here for this specific Family Guy movie because he was worried fans would be upset with him about it because we hold it in high esteem. But, things change. Thundercats, Battle of the Planets. Yes, Thundercats had a crossover in the comics with Battle of the Planets / G-Force / Gatchaman. It's the only good crossover that has ever been done with Thundercats. He-Man and Lion almost threw down. Yes, and He-Man lost. He lost the Eye of Thundera Returns. Yes, I remember this game. Big whoop. Moving on. We only got 5 to go. Thank God. Let's see here. It did. I heard it had a rocky reception. It bombed in the box office, Majimaru. Like, you got to keep in mind this was the 80s, and kids weren't used to seeing that level of violence for their cartoon characters. And there were a lot of very upset parents. So what happened is it got critically panned, it got annihilated by sales, and it killed the animation industry for television products to go to movies for a very, very long time. Let's see here. The Power of Grayskull. Oh, back to He-Man. 15 dark secrets about He-Man. Oh no. Are you going to tell me that He-Man killed somebody? Conan Properties International sued Mattel. Yes, they did because they thought the product was too similar. They lost. He was a modified Big Jim. What? Kind of. But like a lot of clay too. Dolph Lundgren said MOTU was a nightmare. Yes. It wasn't just Dolph. The entire movie's production was a nightmare because Mattel kept shutting them down, reopening them, cutting their funding and uncutting it, arguing about toy rights, arguing about set placements. It was a nightmare because neither side, actually more so on Mattel, couldn't let people do their jobs. Who created He-Man? A lot of people did. Because he was a creative effort from multiple people. I know there's some sort of argument among all of them that X person did or Y person did, but they all had a hand in it. Without one of these key people, He-Man would not exist as we know him now, if at all. Toy line suffered for the stupidest... Tell me what the stupidest reasons are. Lack of He-Man and Skeletor. That's not a stupid reason. It's not understanding the demographic. He-Man's hair was meant to be real. You don't say. Longer hair was covered by a Viking helmet. Yes, Vicor. Give him real hair. Oh, that's what you mean. Right. Correct. He did not exist until later in the comics and, of course, the Filmation cartoon. So, congratulations. You got one thing right. Yes, they almost had a series based on his son, Hero. I really wish they would have. Of course, now that He-Man's getting a little bit more action, more traction, they're probably going to do something like that, and it's probably going to suck because the people behind it are unimaginative morons. Toy sales declined 98% in 1 year. Well, there's a lot of reasons for that, but of course, some people blame She-Ra. It's a mess. Filmation cut a lot of corners to make sure their people were paid, you idiots. Let's see here. Because of quality, or at least they addressed that. I'll give them that. To appreciate just how cheap Filmation was, remember that Orko was really going to be Gorpo, but the studio decided to form him because of the prospect of putting a giant O on his chest. Again, many reasons. Mostly passion. Christchurch Day School held a... Okay, this I genuinely didn't know about. Let's see here. First Baptist. Concerned about state of children's television. Most of the issues revolved around the fact that the Force was used to resolve conflicts. Have you read the Bible? The characters were too aggressive. Mattel fought back with Senior VP Cleveland saying the criticisms about He-Man was unfair and pointing a finger elsewhere. Look at Roadrunner. Can anyone be more violent? Oh my god, you dummy. Okay, so they sat down to do a He-Man workshop and complained about the violence of the show in a church. A church which is often synonymous with Christians. Christians read and follow the Bible. Have you read the Bible? I have. I am a Christian. The Bible is extremely violent. There is nothing in He-Man, in any of the He-Man fictions that comes close to what the Bible is depicted in violence. Oh my goodness. The animated series was a bluff. Blah, blah. He-Man was Mattel's answer to Star Wars. Well, kind of, but mostly it was just we want to put out a toy line. The MOTU sequel became I don't have the facts to check that, so. Justin Marks wrote a dark, edgy film script. I'm sure a lot of edgelords did, and they all suck. Gonna grab another drink. Give me a minute here, and we'll go into 15 dark facts about Skeletor. Even die-hard He-Man fans didn't know. Grim, we're gonna have to check on this. Four left. Come on, Leo, you can do this. He likes Christmas. The meme is infamous. I'm not nice. I like to fight. He was defeated by Pollen. Everyone in that episode was defeated by Evil Seed. They had to combine powers to beat him. He's He-Man's uncle. Well, he might be. He might not be. In the mini-comics, he was listed as such. But we're talking about the cartoon in this image, right? So, no, he wasn't. He was accused of being affiliated with the devil. Everybody was in the 80s. Now, in fairness, if you look at Skeletor, you might get that conclusion. The ram's head staff, the demonic appearance, the fact that he's a literal sorcerer, you might think so. Okay. Oddly enough, one of the writers for Thundercats said he used to get a whole bunch of mail complaining about Mum-Ra being too demonic. It's like he's a literal devil priest. Come on, people. He's a victim of racism. The attorney and cops pull him over. I need to know. I need to know. Have you seen the people of Eternia? If they are racist, they are very bad at it. You're stopping the humanoid blue guy, but you're not stopping the literal man with claws for hands. All right. While Skeletor is undoubtedly an irredeemable figure by now, it probably didn't help that he was a victim of racism early on. In recent Masters of the Universe stories, it revealed that Skeletor, who once went by Keldor, was the brother of Randor. Though Skeletor was next in line for the throne, his father passed him up and the title was bestowed to Randor. Why? Because of the color of skin? No, it's because because Skeletor's ancestor killed King Grayskull in cold blood. His entire species was relegated to one island because they all fell under the curse of Grayskull's blood. It gave me a good laugh, though. He may or may not have a neck. Doesn't matter. No. He tricked He-Man into killing... He never once killed Superman. Alright, so they're showing the original comic, which was the original defining comic for the DC He-Man line. What they're referring to in the article, though, is DC versus Masters of the Universe. And I have people bring this up a lot of times when they talk about versus battles between He-Man and Superman, where you see He-Man running Superman through with the power sword and it killing him. That wasn't Superman. That was a demonic fake created to die at He-Man's hands so the Justice League and heroic warriors would fight amongst themselves, leaving Skeletor and Dark Orko to drain the planet's magic unencumbered, right? So, no, it, number one, wasn't Superman, meaning it didn't have his level of powers, and number two, was specifically made to die. So the kicker to this is, when you actually measure out, specifically the Superman that they usually have him fight against, which is pre-Crisis, against He-Man. He-Man will die. He will die ugly, and he will die quickly. And even in post-Crisis, because He-Man has a threshold, Superman doesn't tend to. Moving on. He had acid thrown in his face. Yes, in one iteration he did, and people seem to think it's the consistent one. He made his ghost his... Scarecrow is not Skeletor's ghost. It wasn't a passed on Skeletor returning it through time. It was literally a ghost. The reason people thought it was it is because his description was the evil ghost of Skeletor. It's like Ninja is the evil ninja of Skeletor. It's not Skeletor as a ninja, it is just his ninja henchman. This was just his ghost henchman. Yes, I saw that, Grim. That was actually interesting. Didn't he twist a dumbbell into a pretzel? He's lonely. Yes. Yes, he did. He did say he was lonely. Tell me about the loneliness of good, He-Man, as they compare to the loneliness of evil. But that was only in the movie. Tried to kill his teacher. Well, haven't we all? And in fairness, Hordak's a prick. If my teacher had me abduct a baby, I'd probably be pretty pissed too. He was eaten by a snake. Well, he was eaten by the floor of a snake castle, which is the living god of the snake men, Serpos. He-Man's got a lot of really interesting lore. He's from another dimension. Oh, so now I thought he was Randor's brother. Come on, people. His people killed the original. Oh, now you want to address that. So is it the racism or is it the killing of King Grayskull? He almost killed he never got close to the killing of the Thundercats. In this comic specifically, he never got close to it. All right. 3 left. Come on. Most inappropriate He-Man characters. Brian Cronin. I actually posted on his Facebook page, and I made fun of him, and he blocked me. It's almost like he's a putz and has no idea what he's writing about. It's great. It's great. But anyways, Masters of the Universe toy line. Most inappropriate He-Man characters. Let's get down the list here, because we only got 3 left. We're raring to go. Mossman. How is he inappropriate? Because reasons, apparently. His smell. Oh no, he smells like, I don't know, moss? Clawful. Hey, he's a fiddler crab. Alright, that's why you got 1 small arm and 1 big arm. Don't you be mean to Clawful. Body parts are missing. Matt, how do you know someone like Clawful who doesn't even get the dignity of having a cool face that is made up like a crab? Well, have you seen a crab's face? You don't want to see that. Crab looking face, well, you still have that, painted on an otherwise nondescript head. So, leave him be. Why are you body shaming Clawful? Hey, he's a firefighter. Snoutspout is a Eternian firefighter, and you owe him some respect. I hope your house burns down, and he's there to save you. Bunch of pricks. Why is it they always take the piss out of toys that have creativity when these idiots lack any of their own? Yeah, Swamp Thing's very inappropriate, especially his cartoon. Stone Dar. Look. You say this toy is inappropriate. I doubt it. I know you're probably making the joke of stoned R, but let's see here. If you ever need a real quick weapon on the playground, you put him in a sock and you can beat some kids. Too bad. Very few action figures are actually named after the feeling a kid has when he or she Dude, people love the Too Bad action figure. What are you talking about? Extendar. Oh no, he has an extension gimmick. Whoa ho ho. Mosquitoer. He actually had blood in his chest. That's pretty freaking metal. Leech. How are these inappropriate? Because even their discussions here, all of this is just talking about, it's hard to imagine any parent being cool with their kids playing with a figure this twisted, although the figure cleverly tries to avoid the whole blood-sucking aspect of the character by saying he drains energy, not blood. Dude, look at him. If your parents have a problem with this, they're Puritans of a higher caliber than mine were. Leech. Leech was actually pretty horrifying in his mini-comics debut, to be honest with you. Tongue Lasher. Up here come the sex puns. Well, there's also the possibility of just literally the name word tongue being protected. Like, there's a lot of stuff. These people are stupid. His real name is Kesher. That's one thing I really hated about the Motu Classics bio cards, having to give everybody a real name. Like, the name they've had for 20 plus years beforehand just wasn't cool enough. Purple Virus. I don't know what you're talking about, Grim. Stinkor, okay. Stinkor's production actually chased the factory workers out of it because of the patchouli oil they would put in the plastic. It was too much for them at one point. He never made his way into the original show. Modulok. Somebody get Joe Amato in here. I think Modulok's actually really neat. He's a modular action figure that you can build and assemble and move around however you want. Scareglow. So again, all these characters aren't really inappropriate. They're all really neat, honestly. Even Rio Blast here, who basically just folds out to have a whole bunch of guns. Blast Attack. Oh my god, these people are stupid. Fisto. Of course, poor Fisto has to be on every one of these lists. You leave Fisto alone. He's a good guy. Literally. 15 Facts You Never Knew About He-Man and the Masters of the Universe by Paco Taylor. Let's see what you're like, Paco. No. 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 Let's see here. No bio. Paco writes on walls and draws on bathroom stalls. This is an adult, people. He loves hip-hop music, kaiju movies, anime, comics, Kit Kats, and Kung Fu flicks. Maybe he can like a better article writing ability. Let's see here. Mattel played the name game. Oh no, having naming conventions? You don't say! They're just making fun of the naming conventions. Dude, read a comic sometime. He-Man was a Conan fail. No, he was not. Like, good lord. He-Man made it rain. Yes, it made a lot of money because kids liked playing with the toys because they were neat. And still are. He-Man versus Superman. Oh no, bringing that up again. He-Man made up for Star Wars fail. Well, I don't really know the exact numbers, but I'd play with a He-Man toy quicker than I would a Star Wars, so I'm just going to say that. The first toy-based tune, well, no, I don't think that's accurate. It's the first major breakthrough in the 80s, sure, but not the first one. Hollywood's first toy-based film. You literally cited Star Wars. And it had a massive toy line. This isn't a toy-based film. This is a concept-based film. They all are concept-based film. If you want an actual toy-based film, it'd be Toy Story. Whatever. The Son of Satan? Skeletor, you never told me. Yes, talking about people thinking he's devil. Orko is Gorpo. Fun fact, if you watch Harry Partridge, I love him. He's a patron too. In his Bowstar shorts, he has a character named Gorpo that's a mixture of Snarf and Orko. It's an homage to that, so check that out sometime. Who's your sorceress? Yes, there was some conflicting information on the first few mini-comics moving into the later mini-comics and the Filmation cartoon. These idiots. She-Ra had the power, actually. Well, they both did. They share the power of Grayskull. It's also a good show, by the way. What does Adventure Time do with this? These most confusing moments in modern toy kit. So you're talking about a toy custom. This is a fact. I mean, it's a neat custom. I wouldn't mind owning it, but it's not a He-Man fact. It's just a customizer. Joe Amato does this regularly. Barbie Prince. I actually got this the San Diego Comic-Con set for my wife. She loves it. She keeps it in package, but they're really impressive, and I really wish it would have gone further with it. But that's not a He-Man fact. It's a She-Ra fact. Murked by Mum-Ra. Yes. He-Man got killed by Mum-Ra in the He-Man Thundercats crossover. Again, poorly written book, and anyone who says otherwise is a liar or has no taste. Fearless Photog, finally. Actually, I thought this was really neat. A fan character that they promised an action figure to back in the 80s finally got what they were promised a few years ago. I would love to own this at some point, because he's just neat. You see, people usually see stuff like this and think it's stupid or silly, but I actually love it. I love this type of stuff. 8 classic cartoons that don't hold up today, and 8 that do. Oh, this is going to be fun. Doesn't He-Man? He-Man does hold up. It's just you have to look at it properly within the frame of reference of the fact that it came out in the 80s and they had to work with what they had. In terms of storytelling and writing, it was beautiful, and I'd say even a lot of the animation still holds up well. The difference is you're looking for flash instead of substance. Doesn't. Beast Wars, are you out of your mind? Hold on. Beast Wars was aged horribly. Yes, that is the flaw of computer graphics, which is one reason why I think 2D is superior, because computer graphics do not age well, but the writing's great. It's fantastic. It is one of, if not the best Transformer series to date. Moving on. Doesn't. X-Men Evolution. I liked X-Men Evolution. Its main writer unfortunately passed away about a month ago. But I don't think it doesn't pass muster. I still think it's really good. It's just a very unique take on an old property. Doesn't well, Sonic Underground never did it. There's I feel really bad for Sonic because he's had a lot of things that could have gone well and none of them ever did except for this newest movie. So I'm sorry, Sonic. I agree with him on this one. Doesn't the Smurfs? I have not seen enough of the original Smurfs to comment on that. So moving on. Doesn't. Okay. Now you speak blasphemy in this house of the Lord. G.I. Joe is fantastic. The problem you people tend to have is that you look at this through a cynical worldview where this idea is silly and I am a big grown adult. Yes, we get it. You're a big strong adult that doesn't have an imagination anymore. Go outside and do your taxes. Doesn't. Captain Planet. Well, the early seasons do. Later seasons tried a little bit too hard. It's one of those high concept things that worked really well in small doses. Captain America was, or not Captain America, Captain Planet was doing the best it could, and I think that they had a solid concept to work with. It just deteriorated after time. Does X-Men? My wife would agree. Unfortunately, I've never seen this show. Yell at me in the comments. Does Thundercats? I do agree. I do agree that it holds up well, but I think you're not being fair to some other shows on this list. I don't care if I agree with you, you're still wrong. Does Animaniacs? Well, in terms of slapstick humor, yes. In terms of punditry, yes. Some things it doesn't, though. And I'm going to be a bit contrarian when I say this, but there are some references, Tiny Toons, Animaniacs, Pinky and the Brain makes, that are very dated because they're sourced on specific instances politically or culturally. It's not quite like Looney Tunes for the most part, and the Looney Tunes did it occasionally, but where it's just really well-timed comedy that doesn't rely on pop culture or political climate. So in that case, the Animaniacs really doesn't. Gargoyles, with the exception of the Galactic Chronicles, chef's kiss. Beautiful. The real Ghostbusters, it does up until I think the last season or two where it was Slimer and the real Ghostbusters, because this show was written by a man who really understood what made a cartoon like this good, who worked with the original concept and made it to where it could be kid friendly without necessarily watering down the concept. And yes, Captain Planet is better than Sonic Underground because I don't have to listen to any musical instruments. Rugrats. Controversial opinion time. I hate this show. I hated this show when I was a kid. I hate this show as an adult. And it's not just the character designs. I know a lot of people like to rag on Class B Shippo because their characters are unconventional looking. They're not He-Man, right? They don't have the beautiful, gorgeous build. But things like Duckman were also really good. And it's the same studio, same animation style. But I just didn't ever care for Rugrats. There's nothing about it that really captivates me. DuckTales, yes, DuckTales does genuinely hold up. Not going to deny that. Samurai, why is Samurai Jack on this list? He's so much more modern than everything else listed. Goodness. Not wrong, but kind of out there. Okay, Mijumaru. My personal taste about Sonic Underground is that I don't care for it. Captain Planet, I did say, good concept, did well for the first few seasons. Gotta give me that one. But that's a whole bunch of articles. So any other comments, questions in the chat before we go ahead and head on out here for the night? I'm glad you guys all joined me because this has been ridiculous. This is the nonsense I have to pour through. This is the type of misinformation I have to fight every single time I put something out. Hour and 23 minutes. Not bad for as many articles as we had to go through. Well, I appreciate you guys all joining me. Let me go ahead and look at the chat, make sure I didn't miss any actual questions. Peace holds up really good. Yes. I'm sure I'm going to have a massive slew of commentary from Grim on my Twitter messages like, this is how they're all wrong. And I appreciate that. I enjoy talking to Grim. He's got some good information. His Too Bad's purple paint spreads? What the heck? He has to take over everything. He has to make 4 bad and 5 bad. Why does Skeletor look so good as a human? It's the goatee, isn't it? That's what it is. Losing my mind? I lost my mind a long time ago. Talk about old 80s cartoons and other cartoons on the internet. I lost my rights to claim I had a mind a long time ago. I've seen a little bit of X-Men, the animated series, just not much. Beast Wars soundtrack is beautiful. Beast Wars oddly is one of those shows that's really weird in the sense that it shouldn't be as good as it is. The reason why I say that is the writers on it were, of course, writers for the real Ghostbusters and He-Man. They'd never written Transformers before. But you see, here's the thing. Here's what smart people do. Larry DiTillo, all these other people. Smart writers, when they don't know a property, they find fans that know it. And they found Benson Yee. And found a way to use him as a consultant when they were creating episodes that would tie into G1. That's what smart writers do. Beast Machines, I disagree. I think Beast Machines aged actually pretty well. I like Beast Machines, unironically. Please send me the 2 bad picks. That's going to be horrifying. I'm going to post about that. That is insane. But thank you all for your time. I'm going to go ahead and end the stream now. You guys have a good night. And, of course, thanks to my patrons. Can't do it without you guys.